video, we're going to finish up our series by tweaking the bottom of the shoe, the sole here, a bit, and then we're going to move on to auto-retopologizing the shoelaces. So just added a little bit of extra geometry here. Going to use the brush tool to kind of massage the placement of the vertices. Also need to cap the ends of the teeth on the shoe here. Okay, I'm using the split rings tool to add a little bit of extra geometry around the edges because we're going to extrude this inward just a little bit. I just selected the edges of this geometry here and using the transform tool to scale it in. Just trying to make another attempt here. And then not only scale it in, but try to seat it a little bit because it's cupped around the edges. And use the split rings tool to add another reinforcing edge loop. So I'm using the points and faces tool just to left click in the center of the tooth, then right clicking to create a polygon whenever I see a good preview. So again, oftentimes this works pretty well, but you can see that sometimes I'm wasting a little bit too much time trying to get a good preview, and so here shortly I'll end up switching to the quads tool. Alright, so I think we're ready, and what I'm going to do now is just drag and drop this layer directly into the models palette so I can reuse it later if I need. Okay, so now that we've completed the top portion of the shoe and the bottom, we have one last area to tend to, and that is the shoelaces, and there's a little loop usually toward the front that the laces will flow through. So this is a particular circumstance where I would try and use Auto-Retopo first, just to try and see if it would give me satisfactory results, because it works really well on a lot of secondary elements that you may have on a model. I probably would not try to use Auto-Retopo on this cleat, at least not the top part here. It just depends on the particular purpose. Once again, if it's far away from the camera, why not? But if it's going to be a close-up product shot, you want that full control that manual retopology gives you. So let's go ahead now and hide the other elements except what we're going to work on. And so I'll need to, actually I don't need to create a new Retopo layer group because Auto-Retopo will generate one for me. So I'll hide that layer, hide the loops, And on this particular shoelace layer, I'll right click, choose Auto-Retopo, and choose this first option. Now, if you're not really familiar with Auto-Retopo, or if you don't have a lot of experience with it, you may want to look at this Auto-Retopo guide. It gives you a lot of very helpful hints, especially hints about not intersecting the guides, trying to keep them to a minimum. You don't want an excessive number of guides, and you also don't want to have guides on both sides of the symmetry plane. You want to make sure you constrain it to just one side. Okay, so the poly count, how many do I think I'll need? I'm going to try about 8,000, and I don't want symmetry on this. If I did want symmetry, then I would check the box here. This default level of auto density will be about what I want. It's fine. What this essentially does is it looks for areas where it's going to need to apply more polygons or greater density in certain areas than it would in others. So I'll just try the default numbers here. And so it's asking, do I want to paint areas where I need more density? I'm just going to click next to move on. And now if I want, I can apply stroke guides here. I think if I were going to apply stroke guides on this particular object, I probably would just go ahead and use the strokes tool all by itself instead of working with Auto-Retopo. So I'll just try and see what it can do. Once again, it really does a really good job on these secondary type of objects. I mean, I really didn't have to do anything on this. I just had to kind of guess at the polygon amount, and that's it. So I'll hide that. When you have these polygons highlighted like this, you can either hit escape to deselect them or Control D, which is the same hotkey combination to deselect in Photoshop. So let's bring up the other layer here, and we'll do the same thing. Auto-Retopo, it remembers the last settings. Again, I'm just going to skip this initial step. I'm going to skip the strokes as well. Okay, so again, I think it did a really good job. I'll go ahead and hide that. I'll hit the escape key to drop that selection of faces, so I can hide that. I decided to skip forward in this video a bit because the first attempt I made, I pushed it more toward the lower side of my estimation, about 2,000 polys. But I find that Auto-Retopo struggles when you try to push your model to the low side. If you stay with the higher side of your estimation, you'll usually get the results you're expecting. That's what I had here with about 5,000 polys. I can always go in with the Delete Edges tool, hold down the Control key to delete entire loops, and that will allow me to delete every other loop rather quickly. Alright, so we're almost done here. I'm going to speed up the playback while we finish up, and all I'm going to do here is just create a symmetrical copy of one mesh to the other side. When you go to the Retopo menu, by default you're in virtual mirror mode. That's just showing you a preview. There is no real mesh on that side. So oftentimes I'll choose to work on just one mesh and then make a symmetrical copy, but you could choose, if you want, to work in symmetry, so that's not necessary. So it's really just a matter of preference. So what I'm doing here is I'm hiding that proxy or that copy that we made just for doing our retopology work. And now once I'm done, I want to hide that copy and then unhide all the others, all the originals. So I'm going to go back to the Retopo room. I'm going to go to the Retopo layer groups panel at the bottom, that little double arrow. You click on that for symmetrical copy. Okay, there it is. And we'll do that for all the different meshes. Okay, so I went ahead and performed a sim copy on each of the elements here, and that will bring this tutorial series to a conclusion. But I want to end with one final note, and that is, if you're ready to bake everything down to this retopology mesh, you essentially go through what's called a merge process. That means laying out your UVs while you're here in the retopology room. You have a mirrored set of UV tools. You just need to click on one of the tools in the UV subsection. Now once you have your UVs laid out, or if you prefer to use Pt.6 to bypass the UV process, then you would go to the Retopo menu and choose the painting mode you want to merge to. With all that said, I hope this tutorial series was helpful for you. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.